All right, I'm going to desensitize Atlas to the lash here. So I'm just going to start on his neck and retreat. So I'm going to do approach and retreat. This is his 18th session, and now I'm just kind of doing a little bit more desensitizing with the lash because I'm going to work my way back into the second section on his body and a little bit into the third, but with the lash down. So I'm just doing lots of approaching and retreating here, and he's really good there. So when it was up on his neck, I'm going to click him and then feed him. So the first section of the horse's body that I desensitize is going to be the muzzle to the beginning of the front legs, so the end of the shoulders and then to the withers. The second section is from the withers back to the hip, like on the belly, and then the front legs. And the third is going to be from the hip back and down, so hip, down, back legs. So the previous video, so he's standing on my lash here, so I'm just going to yield his hindquarters. He already knows this from previously, and then he steps off of it. Perfect. So it just gives me an opportunity to kind of work with something else. So the first video, we did this first section, so now I want to work more on the second section. So he does not like it touching his ear, so I'm just going to try and stay there with him. He took a step away, so I'm going to yield his hindquarters and just kind of reset him, come back to it, and be like, I'm just telling him, hey, remember, I went back to the head first, so remember, it's okay, we touched on your head. And he's like, nah, I don't like this. So I'm like, okay, so that time he kind of stopped flinging his head around, so I click him and feed him for that. So with this process, I'm going to have to back up a little bit. So I kind of go through and I'm like, what can you deal with? What can you handle? And then he's telling me here, he can't handle this. He doesn't like this on his ears. So I'm going to go back and fix this and then go on. So a couple different things I'm going to do. I'm going to do approaching and retreating. And then I'm also going to work on just touching him and rewarding him for being still if he'll do that. Like here, he was pretty good. There was less movement. So I rewarded him for that. And then I waited there. I clicked him, I went into my pouch there, and then I waited because he was kind of moving his head around in anticipation. I just waited till he was still, and then I'll feed him. So that's a little bit of a thing that happens with the positive reinforcement is I'll click the behavior that I want, but it always takes me a second to get it out because it's hard to just always hold it in your hand because this is like alfalfa pellets, so it's hard to just do that. You can do that, which I recommend. So here he doesn't love this. So I'm approaching and retreating. Approaching, try and go on his forehead. He doesn't love that either, so try this side. I'm just trying to stay with him so he can, so I'm like, okay, you can't really escape, and I'm just kind of working my way down his neck and up. But I don't want to just take it away immediately when it's on his neck. Obviously, if he leaves, it's fine. We're just going to go back to a better place. And by that, I mean like lowered on his neck, somewhere where he's more comfortable with the stick at. So I'm working my way back up. It's a little bit better, and then retreat. So I'm just touching him for a second there with the stick. So I'm going to retreat all the way. So I'm like, okay, that was better. So let him sit. If there's any food in there, he can eat, and there's not. So come back. He's licking and chewing there. So I should have waited a little bit until he was done licking and chewing before I came back. So he was leaving there. So I'm just going to go back a step and just let me touch him with the stick. So the whole approaching retreating thing was not doing a whole lot. So I'm just gonna be like, okay, so let's break it down a little bit more. Can you just let me touch you with the stick by the ears? And he did, so I clicked him for that. So as far as getting the treat out, I do want him to wait until he's a little bit more still and then feed it to him. So that's all that was. Just because there can be a little bit of tension in there between the click and as you get the treat out of your pouch. So there I touched him. And he was still, so that's good. I'll reward him. See how he wants to kind of move his head around, and he's like nervous. He's like, okay, you want the food in my bowl? And then when he lifts his head and then he stood still, then I'll toss it in there. So I'll re-click. So I clicked him for having the stick on his ears, and then he was doing the nervous head movement, so I'll just wait, and then I'll click him again for that. So he will know the difference there. I'm just kind of asking him for two things. Which at the time there, he let me touch it, so I'm just going to approach and retreat, and then, oh, very nice, he can let me touch him on the forehead, so I'll retreat. I'll feed him for that one, but it's something you want to work on from the beginning, which I didn't, because I didn't know exactly about it, or I would have added it in from the beginning. It's just having the horse be still and not offer things, because I never taught him to like lift his head and lift his foot on purpose. I did teach it to him, but not on purpose, and so I want him to really be still while I go to feed him. Looks really nice. I'm going down into the third section on his hip there, and you can feel the lash on his legs, and it's kind of touching the bowl a little bit and making a little bit of sound. So that's really nice. And then I'm just kind of getting ready to toss the string over him. So he's kind of jumping here. So I'm going to keep going. I don't think he's going to leave there. That was better. So that time he didn't twitch. So as I tossed the string up and he didn't twitch, I clicked that and then I feed him for it. But I'm just preparing for the lash to swing over his back. So this is just an in-between from the touching to the swinging over, just to get him ready for it because it might freak him out. So move the bowl out of the way here. He stepped on the rope again, or on the lash again. So I'm just kind of putting some pressure and see what he did. And he took a step off. Because I don't want to freak him out, but I'm just kind of doing creative things to get his feet off of there. So we'll go back to doing this. I start that on the shoulder there. Decent with that. He wants to kind of put his head away. He's a little bit worried. You can see how he's leaning away from me a little bit. So I'm going to reward him here, but I'm going to wait for that positioning. So he's searching for his bowl. There, he was still. I'll click him and feed him. So that last time where I was tossing the rope on him, that's when I click, and then he was kind of moving around in anticipation for the food. That's when I'll wait and then feed him for being still. So I'm asking him to do two separate things. So I'm just kind of having the lash touch his side. So I'm looking for a horse that's not flinching. So when the flinching goes away, that's when I'm going to stop. If he's past that point and he's not flinching, I'm going to wait for an eye blink. If he's like about to move or moving, I'll wait for a sign that he's going to slow down or stop. If he does move, it's fine. I would go back a step and try again because you just added too much pressure at once. So I kind of work my way down here, and he's a little worried about it, but he's staying. So as long as he's staying, I'm just saying, okay, how much can you take here? I'll approach and retreat. That looks pretty good. So he's leaning away, like he's not super thrilled, but he is staying. This looks a little bit better here. That was good. So I kind of touched him on like above the tail, so that was pretty good. So I get him waiting because he's tucking his nose and arching his neck and is not super still. That was better, so I'll feed him. So he's already being more still. So you don't see the leg lift as much because I'm not rewarding that because I was accidentally rewarding that before. And then now you're going to see less of the moving the head up and down. It's going to be a lot less. But he just arches, which I'm okay with that as long as he's still. But I'm just waiting for that stillness. If he arches his neck and holds it, that's okay. So I'll come back. My stick is above him because I want him to feel the lash on him. I'll work my way down his hip. I want him to feel that lash on his back legs and behind his tail. Good. And see, I'm taking it on and off, kind of preparing him for that time where I'm going to toss the lash over him. It's just a little bit easier step in there. So I'm just waiting until he stops flinching. You can't tell from here unless it's a really big flinch. There he moved his head up because I'd clicked right before that. So that's where he's like, oh my goodness, I'm getting food. And he's like really excited. So that was better. He was much more still that time. So I'm just going to change sides, do the same thing on this side. So I do the same exact thing on both sides. I just want to make sure that everything works equally. And you definitely don't want to make sure that you're not doing too much on the left side because that can be really easy to do, and especially the Mustangs will notice, and then you'll get to the right side and they'll be like, who is this? What's going on? And they'll completely forget what's going on. So just gotta, until they understand that, until you're doing enough side to side, then they'll be fine. In the beginning, it's very important though. So I'm just raising that lash up so he can feel it on his legs and rub it down his belly here. Toward his hip. He's doing pretty good, actually. He's Oh, and now he's leaning away. See, he's leaning away with his shoulders from this angle, but toward me with his hips. That's the first, like, they get tight in there, and then that's where they might want to kick. So that's his first. They can either kick from there or they can run away from there. So he got a little worried when I picked up my stick, so I'm going to desensitize him to that in a second here. But you got to notice all those little things and then kind of fix them, because if you just leave them, you'll kind of leave that fear in there. So I'm going to desensitize him to that right here. Like, remember this stick? I can pick it up. It can fall down. It's not the end of the world. See, he's putting his head away. He's like, oh, I'm not sure. So just wait. He'll look at me and we'll continue on. But just little things like that. I want to make sure he's okay. It's just something that I can think about, like, okay, he's a little bit worried about that. So I should work on that in future sessions as well. This is looking pretty good. He's at least bending and looking toward me on this side, so that's an improvement from the other side. That's good, and he's pretty still with his head there. I like that. So I'm just going to end him on that, and we'll work on this again some more later.